reason why SpaceX chose a small village like Boca Chica, I think because they sort of the Wild West, right? They can do whatever they want, or within reason, whatever they want, in Boca Chica. It's sort of their own sandbox with which to assemble Starship and test it, versus somewhere like the Cape, where there's going to be more restrictions. There's other rocket companies with launch pads who might get nervous and stuff like that. So, yeah, SpaceX being the only rocket player in Boca Chica, sort of, and probably Texas regulations and stuff like that, all conspire to make it a favorable place to develop and test rockets. It's also right on the Gulf of Mexico, so launch sites typically are next to the water so that you can launch them over the water and not over land. You don't want to launch rockets over a populated area, because then you might get rocket parts raining down on populated areas, like we see sometimes from Chinese launches. D-Berry, thank you for the $5. Their goal is to have a rocket fly from Africa, and you guys inspire me a lot. That would be cool, right? Every continent should have a launch site.
Yes, has anything launched from Africa? African orbital launch sites.
I'm trying to think of something funny.
List of rocket launch sites. Here we go. There are some in Africa, as a matter of fact. Okay, apparently there was an orbital launch complex that launched 230 rockets between 47 and 67 from French Algeria. 10 suborbital rockets from another site in Algeria.
Wow.
27 rockets between 64 and 88 launched from Kenya, some of which went orbital. So
Nice.
Africa has, yes.
That's super good. Good Googling there, Chris.
Yeah, in all, between orbital and suborbital, it's French Algeria before they gained independence, then Algeria after independence. Zaire, which is now the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Egypt, Kenya, Libya, Mauritania, and South Africa have all launched something either suborbitally or orbitally. Or their countries have been used, rather, by others to launch rockets.
Neil, thank you for the £5, asking how fast after ignition Raptor engines reach full thrust. I don't think we know the answer to that.
Oh, it's fairly similar to a Merlin engine profile, I believe, because they ignite I think the ignition commands are sent about 3 seconds as well, and they ignite and rapidly come up to full thrust. It's very quick, just like the Merlin engines.
Makes sense. Pandas, thank you for the $5 Canadian. They say just a reminder to like the stream and subscribe to NSF. Thank you, Pandas, for that. We appreciate it. Ash Mead, thank you for the $50. Good amount of money there. Thank you so much, Ash.
Yeah.
Saying, random question, how many lifts or cranes do you think SpaceX has on site? Keep up the great work. I'm going to say over 100. That seems like a lot. I'm going to say over 50. 50 seems like way too little, and 100 seems like way too many. So I don't know. I'm a notoriously bad judge of distance and amount of things and all that stuff. So
look at the ebullition going there, Jack, at the base of that vertical dark tank.
Oh, hey, yeah, look at that.
Yeah, that just fired up all of a sudden.
Are they still loading consumables into the tank farm from tanker trucks?
Let's have a look here. Yep, that tanker truck is still there over in the lower left-hand corner
That'll do it.
of this shot.
But yeah, thank you so much, Ash, for that $50 super chat. Huge chunk of money there. Here's a viewer question. The Fox asking, how much does wind direction matter for rockets? I mean, it's pretty critical for aviation, especially when you only have one runway, but for a rocket that goes straight up. I think, and Chris, I know you went to that weather, you've been to the weather, what was it, the 45th Weather Squadron or something like that? So you might know better than me here, but I think mostly it's shear, right? You don't want weather, or you don't want the wind at, say, 20 kilometers in altitude to suddenly go from one direction to another direction at a high rate of speed, because that can cause problems. And I think that's called shear. And there might be some constraints for ground winds in terms of when the vehicle is lifting off the pad, but I don't know, how critical is wind direction?
Yeah, so it can end up being very, very critical, especially when you have gigantic launch service structures that are right by your vehicle lifting off. And in that case, wind direction is going to be pretty significant because you can end up with, if the wind is coming at you from like 20 degrees to, I don't know, 90 degrees, right? At a certain speed, it could run the risk of blowing the rocket and pushing the rocket into its launch tower as it does that initial vertical climb off the ground. We do see this a lot. Atlas V has some current wind constraints from certain directions to avoid its umbilical tower that rolls out with it. The Falcon Heavy has some more constrained wind direction flows to ensure that it won't be blown back toward unsafely toward the fixed service structure at 39A. So it can matter on the ground. Now, the good thing with this one today is that what we mainly be worried about is like, are the winds just too high that the vehicle can't control itself, which it obviously doesn't look like. We have a problem with that just based on how the gaseous venting from the tank farm is going. But what we would more be concerned about today is the landing winds close to the ground as Starship is doing that reorientation maneuver and fighting ground winds to do it. In terms of when you go uphill, upper level winds are very much what you would be concerned with because of shear, like you were saying, Jack, where you suddenly go at 20 kilometers and they're going out of the west, and then at 21 kilometers, it's all of a sudden out of the south. Right, and those changes in direction can happen very quickly, like that as you ascend through the atmosphere.
Yeah,
however,
upper level winds can be, extremely fast, like hundreds
oh
of miles
gosh.
an hour.
Oh yeah. I mean, like we're talking, in some cases, like Category 4 or Category 5 hurricane level, at points. They can get really high. But not Category 4. Sorry, Category like 2 or 3 hurricanes. You can get those wind speeds in the upper levels of the atmosphere. And wind speed itself can be a determining factor in the atmosphere, not just shear, but sometimes, especially in the tropics, during the summer months, you can get circulation down there that the upper level winds are just themselves all going the same direction, more or less, but they're just too powerful for the rockets to counter as they go up. And we see this every year with the Vega rocket, which usually has a few months out of the year where they don't like to even attempt to launch it out of French Guiana because they just know the wind profiles are going to be too much for it to handle, so they don't even attempt. So yeah.
If I can summarize that, the wind direction is important when the wind can't agree on a direction.
There you go. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes. Or the wind direction is important when all the directions align and they're going really, really fast.
Or it agrees too much in a direction. How's that?
Yes, or it agrees too much in a direction. Yes.
And sort of on that same note, like if you haven't noticed, they do keep the flaps on Starship folded and chained until they are ready for flight. They're almost always chained up, and I wonder if part of that is a wind issue. You don't want to have a higher cross section on Starship, more things for wind to push against while it's on the mount. It's very, very interesting to me that they keep those flaps folded and sort of almost until the last minute always. And I've always wondered if that's a wind issue or what.
Yeah, probably just... Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, sorry. No, go ahead, Das. I didn't.
No, I was going to say it's probably two things. It's probably minimizing the profile for any wind gusts hitting Starship, but it probably also decreases the stress on the joints. If you have something that's constantly flexing those flaps back and forth over time, it could weaken them or something along those lines, like sort of loosen them up a little bit. And in order to keep that constant shaking from happening, because the wind's sort of buffeting on it as it's just sitting, they probably just secure them to decrease the wear and tear on them while it doesn't need to be wear and tear. Now, clearly, they have to be able to withstand the flight forces. So when Starship launches, the flaps have to be able to extend against the force of the air going by and maintain the orientation of the craft by getting wider and getting thinner and that sort of stuff. But I think they're probably just minimizing the wear and tear when they strap them down like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I think it has to do with that. I mean, it also, I wouldn't be surprised if it also does have something to do with the wind. For that, keep the motors, keep the actuators and everything, like you were saying, wear and tear. But yeah, I'd say that's all it is. I can't see a production reason why,
What do they
or
do
like
on
a
planes, Jack?
flight preparation reason why they would keep them tied up like that.
Like
What'd
at
you
an
say, Daz?
airport, what do they do on planes? Don't they have little clips and stuff that they secure the flaps when the plane's just sort of sitting on the runway?
I don't know that. That's a good question. That's a good question for Thomas.
Before. Yeah, we need Thomas to get that one.
But either way, I am always kind of bummed that the flaps aren't. I mean, Starship looks so much cooler with the flaps extended. So whenever they are extended, it's always such a treat because it's like, oh my god, it just looks like the vehicle is ready for flight.
I will take the dissenting opinion there, because since they're strapped down right now, it means that we get to see them extend the flaps live on the stream if they're going for flight.
Hey,
That's true.
Yeah, fair.
Looking on the bright side there. I need
When
a bright
Starship-
side.
Yeah, when Starship does its wake-up exercises, right?
Exactly. It gets up, gets unchained, stretches a little bit. I
Yeah,
hope
it
that
needs
getting
to stretch before it has its coffee. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I hope that getting unchained is not anybody's wake-up exercise, but for the Starship it is. It's secured
Well, there we
before
go.
flight.
Starship has like Dracula vibes. Christian, thank you for the $10. Asking about aerodynamics and landing burn differing from a straight down fall. I mean, that's a tough question. When they go orbital, it's definitely going to be very different than their current medium altitude hops. And absolutely, the aerodynamics will differ because it'll get to a point in the atmosphere where the atmosphere itself is extremely thin. So I don't think the landing burn necessarily will differ much.
No.
That's what they're testing now with these medium altitude hops. But yeah, once they go orbital, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
It will, and actually, I think I know what this question is in part stemming from. So one thing with Starship's landing profile, it will kill most of its horizontal velocity when it's doing the atmospheric entry portion of its flight. Because ideally, what it gets to, just like a capsule, if just like a capsule descent, is you just basically start falling vertical at a certain point once you've killed that horizontal velocity. So basically what they're testing is more or less exactly what you will see when it returns from orbit. It's not going to be like the space shuttle, massive cross-range capability. This one needs its orbit to more or less align.
Das, are you set up to telestrate right now?
I could be. It'd take me a second though.
Yeah, I mean, if at any point you feel like doodling out the cargo space versus the tank space on a Starship, you can sort of see in this view, you can see that antenna there in the top of the raceway on the right side of the vehicle. Raceway being all those pipes and wires, and that circular antenna, or is that FTS? I can't quite tell. Either way, there's that white dot, and at the top of that raceway, sort of everything above that is nose cone and would be cargo space. The only part of the nose cone that is not usable for cargo space is the very tip, which has the header tank for liquid oxygen. But yeah, so you can sort of get a feel for it like that, and maybe in a little bit here we'll have some doodles on screen that illustrate as much.
Yeah, and I think while we're waiting for Das to finish that changeover there, I think a good point to sort of remind people of a couple of things of what we're waiting for and where we are. You can see over on the left-hand side we have our timeline of activities right now. Pad closeouts are underway. Very crucially, the village has not been cleared. I know we're getting a lot of questions about that in chat. The village has not been cleared yet. So that is another thing that we are waiting for word on. Pad is not clear yet, and the test window runs from a road closure standpoint until, oh, help me out here, Jack and Das. I believe the road closure notices run until 6 p.m. local, but the temporary flight restrictions run until 7 p.m. local time. So we're not sure which one of those is the cutoff on that, but that is the timing for today that we know. We do not know anything else than that. We don't have lines to SpaceX with what time their launch time is. We're not being told any of that. This is all just based on visuals and what their processes usually are. So as such, we're doing our normal stakeout stream, taking your questions. We are doing our very best, but I do want to be honest. We are getting dozens upon dozens of questions every single minute. So we are doing our best to get to them. But my apologies if we do not. We're not ignoring any question. We are going to try, but I think our question queue and super chat queue is well over 100 right now.
Yeah,
so we are trying. Keep asking us questions. But yeah. Sorry, Dos, go ahead.
What a problem to have. There's no way that we can answer all the questions. In fact, apparently SpaceX Master Race makes some memes about the fact that we can't answer all the questions that come in.
Oh, I must have missed that.
I missed that too, but it's a good question to have. It's a good problem to have. Yeah.
I'll link that up in the control center. So Jack, what did you want me to draw?
The cargo space, the usable cargo space on the like. What is the tank section that holds propellants versus what is the cargo space?
Oh, you know something? That looks like it has the wrong lower third on it. Let me fix that real quick and continue answering questions. I just noticed that we were doing the double stream yesterday and we still had that rock overlay up. Let me handle that.
Yeah, I mean.
Oh, did we?
Yeah, we did.
I like that.
To the point of not being able to answer all the. I mean. We are 43 minutes behind now in our super chat queue, and I've been trying to go through these as fast as I can. So yeah, it's a good problem to have, like Dos was saying. Huge amount of support from everybody, and a whole bunch of people with good questions. So we will try to get to all the ones that we can. We cannot get to every single one, but
yeah. Do you want me to take some of the other questions? You've been talking a little while. Do you want me to take some of the question queues that we've got? Okay, cool. Yeah, so here's a good one, and we're a little behind on this one too. Here's a good one from Kimberly H. I'm asking, how will they transport SN15 if it lands successfully? Which is a great question, because there is too cloudy. I like that, Don.
All right, telestration works. Continue.
There we go. Telestration works. Let me go back. I'm so sorry. I had to switch.
Looks like a propellant truck or a nitrogen truck just left or is arriving. I can see it on the bottom right of the screen.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It looks like it was going away.
Yeah, so Kimberly, to your question, if SN15 lands, what we anticipate would happen is they would have to bring one of the blue, what do we call it, Bluezilla? Cranezilla would have to come back out to the landing site and pick it up and put it onto one of the transporters, which would either take it back to the production site if they plan to inspect it and disassemble it, or would have to transport it closer to one of the suborbital launch pads if the plan is to stick it back on one of those pads and do some testing there. But that's what they would. That's how they would have to move it after it lands. Great question there. What?
It's Tankzilla, by the way.
Sorry, Tankzilla. There we go. Thank you.
I'll have to explain the differences in the cranes, because there are Zilla cranes and then there are non-Zilla cranes. And we have Tankzilla out there because Tankzilla was the original tank picker-upper. And now there's another bigger crane that they're going to use to put starships on top of super heavies and probably build that big tower as well. And that is also a Zilla-style crane, but it's not Tankzilla. It's got to be something bigger.
Stackzilla.
Stackzilla?
I don't know.
That's not bad, actually. Stackzilla.
I like that.
Yeah, and before Tankzilla, there was Bluezilla, which they used to assemble the high bay, if you remember that.
Bluezilla, thank you. I knew that. I knew I was remembering that name from something regarding Starship. That was it, yeah. Maybe we need a shirt that has the Crane family.
The Crane family, nice.
That's adorable. I would totally wear that.
I would too.
Yeah, I mean.
But here's one from. Oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
No, go for it. I was just gonna wax poetic about the merch store, but no need.
Yes. I believe we'll mention the merch store several times, but yes, maybe we'll have a Crane family one there. I like that idea. But from Chronoblitz here, asking, when will the new GSE tanks be used for suborbital flight or orbital flight? So I have a question for the rest of the team that I kind of need to know to answer this question. Is there cross-country feed lines from those new tanks to these suborbital pads, or are those tanks only meant to service the orbital pads?
I think the latter, but I'm not positive.
I think, that's what I was thinking too. Because the tank farm that you see on the left-hand side of your screen here that sort of surrounds Starhopper's children, as if you will,
Nice.
are the propellant tanks and helium and nitrogen purge and pressurization tanks for the two suborbital pads and the test stand that you see the nose cone in its rig. In the larger GSE tanks that you see on the center of the screen, out not in a cage, and then over toward the orbital launch mount and tower that's starting to take place on the right-hand side of your screen, those are for the orbital launch site. And we don't have any indication that there are cross-country propellant lines, nor would there really be a need to, really, between those larger tanks and the suborbital. And this leads to the next question that I wanted to get to, which was from Rocket Sometimes Launches, asking, why does it take the same amount of time to fuel up for a launch as it does for a static fire? Wouldn't there be more fuel for a launch, meaning more time? And this is a great question, and propellant tanks are where this comes down to. The SpaceX does their static fires, or tries to do their static fires, as if they are the launch countdowns. So when we've seen Starship static fired here, they've only put in the amount of propellant that they will put in for the launches. So basically what you're seeing them doing in a static fire is everything that they need to do for one of these 10-kilometer hops, which does not involve fully fueling the vehicle. If they put the full amount of liquid oxygen and liquid methane into Starship without Super Heavy and just 3 sea level Raptors, the Raptors would not be able to lift it. So they have to modulate or they have to account for that and adjust how much fuel they're actually putting into the tanks so that the thrust to weight ratio at liftoff is still greater than 1, so that the Raptor engines can actually lift it off the ground. So for that reason, you don't need to fuel the Starship to completion, so you don't need the larger GSE tanks that we see going in at the orbital pad, which not only have to account for Starship, but also the Super Heavy vehicle as well underneath it. But those were 2 great questions that sort of merged together there, and wanted to definitely get them back to back there.
While we're on the subject of a T-shirt with all the cranes on it, somebody is suggesting vinyl stickers for my crane family, like, on the car, on backs of cars, when they have like the annoying
Nice.
stickers where it's like, parents and kids and dogs, and you're like, oh god. At least I am. Sorry. We could do that for cranes, or my other ride is Tankzilla. That would be a good one.
My other ride is an SPMT. Would make a lot of sense there.
Yes, that's a good one. The other day I saw a bumper sticker that was, my other ride is crippling anxiety, and I identified with that bumper sticker.
Yes. Oh my god, yes. I don't think I've ever identified with a bumper sticker quite so much.
Yeah, I felt seen.
So Joshua is in chat. Joshua Rager is asking or commenting that, does that mean that the crane on top of the launch tower should be called Orbitalzilla?
Orbitalzilla? Does it lift orbitals?
Well, if it's the one on the tower, I don't know. Does it?
I mean,
Somebody suggested Mecha Tankzilla for the new crane. I kind of like it. I kind of like it.
That's actually not bad. We need to make like an animation with them making noises, like Godzilla noises or something.
Right. Here's a good question from Emily Blades, asking, do you think that the Starship will fly crew on a lunar landing first, or do you think it will do a crewed orbital flight before that? What's your opinion on some kind of launch escape system? This is a very interesting question. So it's not actually asking, will NASA do an uncrewed demonstration flight of the lunar lander first? It's actually asking, do we think Starship will land humans on the moon first, or do its first crewed orbital flight around Earth first? I think I'm going to go with it'll end up doing it might end up doing a crewed orbital flight first, just because the timeline for the Artemis program is nebulous right now. 2024 is workable with a Starship design for a landing attempt, but NASA also is not sure if the 2024 Artemis 3 mission is going to actually be the crewed lunar flight at this point, or whether it's going to involve some sort